Hello and welcome to the Amargi Mosaic. I'm your host, Elif Sarican. Today I am joined by Khalil Muhammad, who is a journalist, fixer, and interpreter, usually based in Qamishlo, but currently in his hometown of Kobani, the city that became a global symbol of resistance when it pushed back ISIS in 2015. Right now, we're witnessing what many are calling existential fight for Rojava's popular revolution and its people. Ceasefire between the Syrian Democratic Forces and the Syrian interim government, also known as HDS, has collapsed. The interim government forces are currently surrounding Kobani, attempting to put it under siege, and there's a general mobilization across northeast Syria, Rojava, and actually Kurdistan more broadly. As Khalil, as someone living through these developments and also with a history of reporting on them, has a unique perspective on what this moment means for the future of the revolution in Rojava. Khalil, the situation seems to be fast changing. And recently we saw video of statues symbolizing female fighters who helped liberate Tabqa from ISIS being violently destroyed in that same city. Meanwhile, reports are coming in about ISIS prisoners being freed from areas that have fallen under Syrian interim army control. This is happening as a ceasefire between the SDF and, Damascus and Jalani has completely collapsed and actually in many ways never really implemented. Kurdish leaders in Syria, in Rojava, are saying that the HDS that emerged from al-Nusra Front, an ISIS offshoot, and a later al-Qaeda Syrian affiliate until 2016, are now demanding the total surrender of SDF areas. You're witnessing this firsthand in Kobani. Can you tell us a bit about what the mood is like in Kobani and, how people are preparing for all of this?
Right now, in modern Kobani, it's the city and the people are once again witnessing the history as before in 2014. The mood is a bit tense. There's an emergency situation. There's a mobilization by all the security forces, the SDF and the people. They're warning that the Syrian government forces factions, they are currently having clashes surrounding villages of Kobani, that they were coming towards Kobani, but people are getting ready to defend themselves, as we saw the calls from the SDF and the Kurdish leaders yesterday. They are also handing the weapons to defend themselves as the agreements deals collapsed with the Syrian government. This will lead to intense mobilizing situation in all northern Syria, as right now in Kobani from the ground, the history repeating itself, as in 2014 ISIS surrounded Kobani and siege. We're facing it right now again. People are worried that there'll be massacres and mass killing by the Syrian government factions, that we also have seen some actions of them in other areas of brutal dealing with the Kurdish fighters, with the females and people who were trying to flee the other areas toward the other Kurdish area.
Yeah, and I mean, many are also saying that other minorities across Syria, like the Druze and the Alawis and other minorities, even though there wasn't a ideological connection with Rojava, the revolution, a lot of minorities saw almost the existence of Rojava, the northeast of Syria administration, as kind of a guarantor that things wouldn't get so bad for them. And now other minorities are also worried that if essentially the Syrian interim government is able to succeed in what they want to do, they're worried about what will happen to them even more than what has already happened since the interim president Ahmed al-Shara took over. Can you tell us a bit about how we got to where we got to? What happened, and also what might be next for the whole of Syria, not just for Kurdish people?
As for other regions of Alawi and Druze and other minorities and Christian in other regions, they having the solidarity call for Rojava and northern Syria against these vast attacks. Yes, that's true. The minorities they during this collapse of the Syrian post Syrian governments, like Assad government. After that, there was a big gap of like risky, dangerous situation in Syria, that they were finding SDF territories as sanctuary, like a safe place, even like to head to. As we saw, we witnessed stuff, things in coastals and the Rosy Sueda areas, that many people try to reach this area to safe area to refuge, and did some people actually did. And now the general mood, even for them, it's a bit worrying, because they says like the things will happen here, like if they take control of full of Rojava, that they will be also in danger. Tomorrow it will be for them, because it's happened again. They cannot guarantee like that they're not happening. They are, and the trust is less and less by the trust become less and less by days. They cannot trust the government, because they face it before and face it again, and seeing it in northern Syria again. That's they say that they are like they're seeing that their life getting close to the danger day by day. And how we end up, like how these things currently end up here in northern Syria. It was like series of the negotiation and meetings and dialogues between the Syrian officials and northern Syria officials that we led today, and they were like, in the end, the dialogues like were not successful. And as we saw, the 10 March agreement was agreed to some points to be implemented within 1 year, which like some sides were trying to always postpone it to delay the time, in order like to having a different like this is like by their plan was like an agreement, and there was a no agreement. There is agreement, there was a no agreement that they can delay the tail, like kind of like preparing themselves for this day. For that, we can say there was like kind of deceive in this agreement by the Syrian government. I mean, they were accusing the SDF, that SDF officials in Western Syria, that they're not applying to the agreement. Like they don't want to apply to the agreement of the 10th of March. And the SDF was accusing them that they are not doing that. In the end, we end up in another agreement happened 2 days ago between one meeting in Erbil and another meeting didn't happen, unfortunately, in Damascus. So some agreements was called on between them. In the end, there was like Muslim Abdi tried to, after it was public, and they were to discuss it again to have some guarantees, and from international countries or from the US exactly, or from the coalition. They are now like the guarantees was weak despite the agreements. The forces of the SDF were like withdrawing from permanently the Arab areas, but they were like and the first and big disagreement on the first article was that the war should be the ceasefire should be implemented in all Syria. But that did not happen, and that was the triggered the agreement to collapse. And second most important article was like to SDF that joined individually to the into Syrian government.
Yeah, and I mean, as you said, particularly as a result of, the collapse of all of these, but it seems like, some are suggesting that this was always the aim in some ways. And as you said, and as we've heard reports, Syrian, like HTS government forces are now surrounding Kobani, your home city. As you've also said, there are clashes around some of the villages of Kobani, whilst also Turkish army drones are also striking nearby. And I think many people watching will know, but for those who might know, Kobani isn't just another town or city, right? Kobani is where the world first saw that ISIS could be defeated territorially, where YPJ and YPG fighters showed particularly what Kurdish women's resistance looked like. From your perspective, what does this attack represent, particularly in the context of what the symbol that Kobani became, and how are the women who were central to Kobani's defense responding to this new attack?
I would say the voice of people, the voice of women and people who resisted there, who defeated ISIS on behalf of the world. Currently, they have like a disappointed thing on especially an international countries and national community that said they have been like kinda by the international community that they helped they helped each other one day, like they defeated the most dangerous terrorism in the world, and now they are literally leaving their partners and friends behind and turning the blind eye on it. So that's a fear. But of course, the people have their morale. They are not that this is like we're not gonna defend again. They're in high alert, and this says they will repeat the history again and defend the town of Kobani. And as you said, the town of Kobani was symbolic. One day was symbolic, like symbolic area and symbolic town for the world who was like defeated ISIS in 2014.
And I mean, unfortunately, it seems some are trying to declare this attack as the end of the Rojava revolution. But we're also seeing, as you've said as well, and there's been a lot of reports from the ground that that we're seeing an unprecedented mobilization, actually, in some ways, probably even more than what happened in 2014 when ISIS first besieged Kobani and also obviously tried to march on other parts of the northeast. And again, many people may have forgotten, but those who created the Rojava Revolution is 11,000 martyrs created and defended the Rojava Revolution, right? And now we're seeing young people from North Kurdistan, so southeast of Turkey, flocking to the Turkish border, trying to cross and support the self-defense. People across South Kurdistan, so the Kurdistan region of Iraq, are on the streets saying that they'll protect Rojava and also marching to the border from that end. And people across Europe are demonstrating. It really does seem like an unprecedented mobilization. You're also seeing the effects of these mobilizations up close. How significant is this? Is this the beginning of a different kind of resistance? How significant is it that, people are flocking to the borders to defend Rojava?
As you said, as you mentioned, that the mobilization in general, like in Kobani or in towns of Qamishlo and Hasaka and Derik, and all like all long stretch of the border, it's tremendous. It's big. It's very big. It's by the people, all the of the region, and by the security forces of the region. Of course, since the call for mobilization has been out, and for the Kurdish nationalistic people around the world, across the borders, in Europe, in diaspora, and other part of Kurdistan, as we have witnessed yesterday in between Nasibin and Qamishlo. People was burning this institution of like in crossing border between Nasibin and Qamishlo, and try to cross to Qamishlo other day. And there was demonstration here and there. And there's a news actually today. There will be a demonstration by by Kobani sewage versus a border that people will be heading to mobilize the border for like to match this call by the Kurdish and to save their brother in northern like in Rojava here. Yeah, it's just tremendous and significant for the people and people of the regions. They're calling everybody to mobilize, to go on the street, to do the actions against these attacks on the Kurdish people here in Rojava.
Thank you very much, Khalil. And finally, as someone who is on the ground, what would be your message to the world? Those who are listening, what do people really need to understand about what is at stake and what is being threatened right now?
I think a whole nation of people in northern Syria, it's been threatened and under amendment attack that will be bloodshed in the region if there is no urgent calls or appeals to stop the war and to save the Rojava. Once Rojava has done for the world, and now it's turn for the world to do it for Rojava, to stop them and to guarantee some sovereignty for these areas, to save the life of civilians and people from like of Rojava and the Kurds here.
Thank you so much, Khalil Muhammad. Really appreciate you joining, considering the context that you're in
Thank you.
right now. And yeah, thank you very
Thank you for
much.
having me.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
that's it for today's episode of the Amargi Mosaic. Until next time, take care.